Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, Chapter 19, is here, and it is time for the breakdown. This chapter is incredible. I mean, this series is just on a tear right now, and it's got everything. We're going to be breaking down power system mechanics, we're going to be breaking down character development, and just the overall plot in this chapter. So, not going to waste any more time. We're going to jump right in, and the chapter opens up where we left off with Dabura and Maharaga. Dabura had just decided to use his curse technique on himself to then use brute force to destroy Maharaga. So he had never used it on himself previously because trying to travel at that high of speed would break his body apart. But he decides to lock in and do it anyways because he needs to try to find a way to destroy Maharaga now that he has adapted to light-based techniques. And it starts with him blitzing right past Maharaga, and then we see Maharaga like lift up their left arm and it's missing the hand. So as Dabura passed by, just took Maharaga's left arm off right there, or his left hand. We see the wheel spin, ka-tink, locks in place, and then Maharaga's whoosh, his left hand right back. But then we see Dabura in this next insane double-page spread here of him just in full sprint mode and light ahead of him. And then there's like a ton of Maharagas on both sides of him. But this is to illustrate, because of the insane speeds that he is traveling at right now, it is giving the optical illusion that there is all of these Maharagas. So there's not actually, but we see the buildings that he's running past are just collapsing, which makes sense. This dude is reaching sublight speed. And even here, we see him as he's running and he's thinking to himself, more, closer to the light. So I love this visual representation of how this power is working, because it's Maharaga, or Dabura is trying to catch up to the light, because we know he's not going at light speed like his attacks are, but because they don't have the restriction of a physical body, but he does. But he is trying to reach that speed. So he is continuously like chasing the light to try to catch up to it. So it looks incredible. The art in this chapter, I mean the art every chapter, but Yuji Iwasaka has been absolutely popping off. And from a story perspective, Gege is absolutely in his bag. Honestly, the fact that Modulo as a sequel series is so good, and it does not dilute or ruin anything in the original series so far. You know, let's keep our fingers crossed, but it's earned my trust. You know, I wasn't really worried about it, but from what we've gotten so far out of these 19 chapters, I think it's safe to say that this is just a phenomenal short-run sequel for the universe of Jujutsu Kaisen that we all love. So we cut over to the next page, and Dabura has now leapt into the air to prepare himself for a kick with his left leg. And I'm not just going to say it every time, but the art is so good. It looks so sick, because Dabura is thinking to himself, he's like, it burns, it's heavy. And what he's referring to is the fact that as you get closer to the speed of light, the air behaves less like a fluid and more like a solid. So we can see with this kick, as he's bringing it up to come across to prepare it, he's saying it burns and it's heavy. One, the friction because of the speed he is moving at. And then two, it's heavy because now it's functioning like a solid. And the way Iwasaka has drawn it here, it looks almost like it's a film, like a solid film that is wrapping over Dabura's leg, because now the air itself is that solid. It is a super cool way to illustrate kind of like the physics behind it. Now, obviously, not everything follows physics here, especially in shonen, but it's a super cool touch. And Dabura thinks to himself, like, but I don't care. So the pain, he's like, it doesn't matter. I've got to catch up to the warriors. And this is where that film-like glass from the air shatters as we see Dabura, like as a light beam, basically go right into Maharaga's face. And then we see a flash, like a small ball flash on top of this building. And then the next panel is just explosion of the surrounding city blocks. And then Dabura jumps back, like disengages and looks up. And then we see the Dharma Chakra wheel floating with just this little speck of what's left of Maharaga behind. So not absolutely destroyed, even with a sub-light speed kick, which is pretty insane, but there is a reason for that. But before that, Dabura thinks like maybe it's easier for him to adapt to simple brute force than some complex curse technique, which we know is absolutely true. The complexity of whatever he is receiving as an input absolutely plays a major factor into the speed of his adaptation. That's the reason that in Shibuya, when he fought Sukuna used initially just a regular dismantle. But from that dismantle, Maharaga adapted to all slashing techniques, because a slash, it's dismantle is a very simple technique. It cuts. It's like a blade. It's just a cursed energy blade, basically. And Maharaga was able to then just immediately adapt to all slashing attacks. Whereas we know during the fight with Gojo in Sukuna, it took him 4 spins to adapt to the Limitless. So because the Limitless is naturally an exceptionally complicated curse technique, so Sukuna had to take in that experience for the wheel over 4 spins for Maharaga to gain that adaptation. And Dabura thinks like, this is getting frustrating, but at the same time, I've never experienced this before. A part of me is actually enjoying fighting, and we see him just with this satisfied look on his face, and he's got his hand up. It looks incredible, but this is where I'll pause here. And for anyone who is maybe confused as to how Maharaga survived that sub-light speed kick, it definitely had the power, because that's not the issue. It had the power to destroy Maharaga in a single hit, in a single blow. The problem was that in the beginning of the chapter, and a lot of people might miss this part, in the beginning of the chapter, when Dabura goes past Maharaga, he takes off Maharaga's left hand. And that is a brute force attack. And we see Maharaga's wheel spin as he regenerates his left hand, but that adaptation to brute force attacks has now happened. And because it is simple, it is easier to adapt to, even though Dabura hit him at this point with a sub-light speed kick. Yes, it completely eviscerated him, but because Maharaga had adapted to brute force attacks, no amount of brute force would be able to completely eradicate him. He is essentially unkillable to brute force at that point. So that's why, even with all of that, he is unable to put Maharaga down with it. But even though this just has some crazy power scaling implications, and I know like some people not huge on power scaling. I personally enjoy it. It's not like everything to me, but I think it is important, especially when it comes to battle shonens, and it plays obviously a very heavy part of the stories and the narratives. So I know that here Dabura's he is proving himself to be an exceptional fighter and a real problem when it comes to power scaling. If we want to like combine all of Jujutsu Kaisen's universe now into one list of power scaling, I think Dabura, even though people were dunking and clowning on him, I'm assuming last chapter because of his, fear of when Maharaga had first adapted, his light had become ineffective against Maharaga. But the dude, we talked about it last chapter, he had never experienced a real fight before. He just destroyed everybody so easily that he never actually had to fight. But now clearly he is locking in and showing himself to be that caliber of fighter. I think from a power perspective, like cursed energy, reserves, physical reinforcement, and curse technique, he is on that upper echelon tier like Gojo and Sukuna. Now, by no means, I do not have him over either of them, but I think the point has been to show that he is of that level of strength, but then there are kind of tiers within that general level. The biggest thing that probably would be a hindrance right now for Dabura is the fact that I'll touch on it some more later because we're kind of approaching that part. Actually, I'll put a pin I'll put a pin in that real fast and keep going on here because I don't want to overshadow the incredible character writing that we have here for Dabura, because then we get this panel that I never thought I'd ever see in my life, but it fits so well for what is actually happening here, because it's a full panel of Dabura and Maharaga basically dancing. Like they're partners in a dance, which, there's a lot of symbolism between fighting and dancing in the first place, not just in JJK, but in just all kind of fighting medium out there, because it's a give and take that from your opponent. It's constant motion. So it's just it's amazing imagery, because Dabura is thinking he wants to fight more. He wants to fight better. He wants to be reborn into a version of himself that he doesn't even know. So he is truly feeling the essence of what it is to fight and be a warrior. And he is basking and enjoying it. And it is incredible writing from Gege here. But then we see Dabura like kind of grimace, and then we see his left leg that he used for the kick against Maharaga is just this charred, mangled stump that's like barely holding on. And Dabura just thinks like, this is getting in the way. Maybe I should just cut it off. But this is where he thinks to himself that, can Earth's jujutsu even heal people? Because like they offered some special treatment to both Maru and Cross when they got hurt, and it's something that doesn't even exist in Sumerian jujutsu. So he's like, how can they heal people with cursed energy, which is negative energy? We knew from the explanation back in the main series that, cursed energy can be used to reinforce and strengthen, but it cannot be used to heal because it is naturally a negative energy. So you need the positive. And he also says that the spiritual being, Maharaga's blade, which was the sword of extermination, it's enveloped in positive energy because it is specifically geared towards eradicating cursed spirits with a single blow. But then we know it can be changed later on too, because in his fight against Sukuna and Shibuya, he then changes it to cursed energy, because attacking with positive energy against a human there's no point, because they're not made of cursed energy. But then he's like thinking to himself, is there some technique that converts cursed energy into a positive kind of energy? And then in the next very panel, we see his left leg totally regenerated. And he's like, I see. He's like kind of flipping it around like, I see. Earth's jujutsu is quite advanced. So this dude, without ever actually seeing it, it's only been hinted that it might exist, and getting a little bit of a feel from Maharaga's sword, was able to instantly regenerate a limb, which we know regenerating a limb is extremely difficult, even for exceptionally powerful sorcerers. Now, let's leave Gojo and Sukuna out of the equation because they are anomalies, and Dabura himself clearly is also an anomaly, because this isn't even like Higuruma when Sukuna was like, during the fight, Sukuna's like, learn RCT right now, do it. Like, do RCT, which is crazy that Higuruma was actually able to pull it off. But Higuruma already knew of the existence of RCT prior to that fight, and he had to figure it out right then. And right here, Dabura didn't even see it or knew it really exists. He was just questioning it and like testing it and figuring it out, and he was able to boom. So that right there was one of the major weaknesses for power scaling discussions for even the Sumerians in general, but especially Dabura, because my biggest thought was, after seeing his level of strength and his curse technique, I was like, okay, from a raw power standpoint, he absolutely is in that highest tier of characters. But the biggest weakness being, one, we haven't seen any reverse curse technique from any of the Sumerians, and two, we have not seen domains. We don't know. My assumption is that they actually do not, because if Dabura believes that RCT is quite advanced, then I am led to believe that the pinnacle of Jujutsu, which is domain expansions, has also not been discovered by the Sumerians. So one, now Dabura has RCT, so that takes away that issue for him in power scaling debates. But additionally, now the biggest weakness for him is the fact that, at least as far as we know, he does not have a domain expansion. And then even without a domain expansion, you can still compete a little bit if you have anti-domain countermeasures, such as simple domain hollow wicker basket. They don't know things like domain amplification to help mitigate damage against curse techniques. So it's just, there are still aspects of the Jujutsu system from Earth that it seems the Sumerians do not have. And those things are real hindrances against the Sumerians when it comes to power scaling debates. Because even though he can move at exceptional speeds, we know that the highest tier of fighters can witness a spark when a technique is about to be activated, and that spark gives prep time basically to react. Now, you still need to have the physical reinforcement stats and perception to be able to react properly to someone moving as fast as Dabura, but there are ways. And then simply opening a domain expansion, it doesn't matter how fast Dabura moves, because the sure hit effect it's guaranteed to hit. So if he has no countermeasure against that, a lot of people, now that he has RCT, a lot of domain expansions, he probably could just RCT his way through whatever the sure hit effect is. But for things like Unlimited Void, Yorozu's Perfect Sphere, stuff like that, he has no recourse against, and he just straight up dies and loses. So I'm still hoping. We haven't seen any domain expansions yet in Modulo. We know the general level of the sorcerers since the Inhuman Makyao against Sukuna. We know that their level of sorcerers has gone down over time. So they are weaker than they used to be. So the pinnacle of Jujutsu seems to not really be something that is prevalent amongst their sorcerers. But with the reintroduction of a certain character later in this chapter, it gives us a chance to potentially see a domain expansion, and maybe that will translate over to the Sumerians as well. But I yapped on long about that. Thank you for thank you for sitting through that if you did. But then we cut over to kind of a briefing between the humans and the Sumerians. Now, I'm not going to go into all of this text because it is a lot, but basically, because of the fight between Dabura and Yuka Maharaga, there's a high possibility that the cursed spirits residing in Tokyo are going to start spilling out from the city in all directions. So the problem isn't the quality of the cursed spirits, so it's not that they're going to be exceptionally strong, it's just the amount. Because grade 2 and higher will probably not leave, they'll probably just hunker down somewhere away from the fight and stay there, whereas all of the massive amounts of lower tier cursed spirits are going to proliferate outwards. So they adjusted the barriers to basically corral them to only coming out of a certain section of Tokyo. That way they will go towards the ocean as much as possible, so uninhabited areas. But then they also just, they evacuated some of the surrounding area around Tokyo to make sure. So they're there to pretty much be damage control and limit casualties as far as they possibly can. So that Yuka would be the only one who, basically the only casualty in this battle. Then we cut to the Sumerians, and they're thinking, oh, well, there's no guarantee that the Earthlings are going to abide by the rules for this duel. And they need to make sure that no one interferes with Dabura's fight. So they're going to go around, you know, in the area and make sure there's no humans skulking about ready to interfere in this duel. So they're going around, and then, of course, we have, because this is what's happening in Modulo all the time. It's a bunch of misunderstandings that keep happening between the two groups now that are increasing the tension between them. And we, of course, see a group of sorcerers here in the same building as the Sumerians as they're going, and they just walk right into each other. And the Sumerians are like Earthlings, and the Jujutsu sorcerers are like Sumerians, and they're all getting their weapons like they're ready to start fighting each other. And then we cut to the next page, and we've got our boy Yuji Itadori pulling up. He's still got the hood up, and he's like, man, I told him this would happen. Not that I actually said it out loud, but still, which is hilarious. Like, bro, you didn't, if you didn't say it out loud, you didn't tell him. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, I thought it though. And it's like the one person when you like watch a movie that there's like a twist, and then after the twist happens, they're like, man, I knew that was coming. I just didn't say it though. And you're like, what do you mean? Even if you did, and I believe you, like, it doesn't matter because you didn't say anything. It's just, it's funny dialogue here from Yuji. But he is then, we see him, he's got his hand out, and we see an orb of blood. So he is building a convergence of blood, because we know Yuji has blood manipulation on top of Shrine from consuming the rest of the Cursed Womb death paintings. And again, they are just intentionally not showing us Yuji's eyes. We have not seen his eyes this entire series. He's always been cloak and dagger, hood up dude. And I don't know if this is just a stylistic reveal sort of tactic where it's like, you know, building the anticipation to finally see Yuji's whole face after it's been all of these years of him not aging. We don't know at what age did he stop, like, physically looking different. But it could also, so it could just simply be building up hype and anticipation to see his full face, or there's a real reason. And I don't know, maybe like he has 4 eyes now because of the influence of Sukuna from within him and his awakening, and now that he's aged so far, kind of similar to Tengen. Tengen's was 500 years and it has not been that long, but still, maybe naturally Yuji, his constitution was already exceptionally unique. He basically became a cursed object himself. So it's just like, my mind is like, okay, maybe he has 4 eyes, maybe a different there might be something going on with specifically Yuji's eyes. But I'd love to hear if you got any good ideas. Please let me know down below what you're thinking. But then we see Mino here, and he notices Yuji, but he doesn't know it's him, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? And Yuji, we just see him, well, then Mino's like, and we see Yuji clap his hands together over the convergence orb and say, piercing blood. And this is where we get an insane show of Yuji's skill that has developed over the years with specifically blood manipulation. We knew in his fight against Sukuna, Yuji could not even create his own convergence. He had to literally get Choso to create it, and then he like took it to use it. One, he takes it, it's a huge convergence, and then he is shooting more than like 10 piercing blood beams out of this single convergence. And he is remote controlling it through the building to precisely disarm and de-escalate all of the people inside. So he's just nicking them enough to get rid of their weapons and get them to basically stop engaging each other. And then we see the blood like explode out of all of the windows of the building. And Yuji's like, wiping his hands, and he's like, too much, thinking to himself. And Mino's just like, Yuji Itadori. So our boy has leveled up incredibly. That was just so casual. And it's like all of those piercing bloods could have been used to just straight up kill all of those people. But they weren't, obviously, because Yuji's not a bad guy. But it's crazy. He is able to remotely control. Now, I don't think that because they are not traveling in a linear fashion and like a normal piercing blood, I don't think they have the same speed at which that attack does. But it's insane. He can't even physically see them, and he is able to direct his technique through the building to precisely hit each of them in the right spot to de-escalate the situation. So it's crazy. It's so awesome to see Yuji back in the series. I am so excited for what is coming next. I don't know if there's been like an official announcement for how long Modulo is supposed to run. I know it's not supposed to be very long. I've seen maybe some things float around like 25 chapters, like 3 volumes worth. And that would mean there's like 6 chapters left. So my hope, and this was the same thing with Jujutsu Kaisen's main run, I always just want more. I want more. And I'm happy, so happy and grateful that we've gotten what we have here with Modulo. And if it ends at 25, it ends at 25. There is definitely more juice to squeeze out of this story if they feel so inclined to. And I believe that it has been received very, very well by the audience at large. So maybe we'll get lucky and they'll extend it. I don't really know. If any of you have any more information, please feel free to comment and tune me in. But that is the breakdown for chapter 19 of Modulo. And if you've made it this far, I greatly appreciate you, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace. Well, I just finished recording the chapter breakdown, and I realized that I had forgot one major aspect of the chapter that I wanted to discuss. So I guess I'm just going to throw this in here like a bonus section at the end of the video, but it's going to be focused around Dabura's curse techniques situation and potential now newly opened win condition against Maharaga if the fight actually goes to conclusion and Yuji doesn't like show up to basically stop it himself by being an outsider like Sukuna was and stopping the ritual and then somehow maybe helping Yuka. And I didn't even talk about that in the chapter breakdown either. There's so much that I want to talk about with this. But for Dabura, I am slightly confused because at least in the official translations, it's been referred to that he has curse techniques, plural, with an S. But then in obviously chapter 18, after the light was adapted to, he basically was saying he was like out of options, like that his curse techniques had already been adapted to. But if he has multiple, why could he not just use the other one that we haven't seen a name for? And so one possibility is that actually what we've been seeing with the light has been both curse techniques combined. So we know the other one is some sort of like murderous intent made tangible, and we've seen his light beams actually have a physical, tangible aspect to them. He was able to stand on them, which you normally cannot do with light. It's photons, it's not physical. So it's like, my thought is that it's actually the two of those things combined together to make his curse technique what we've seen so far, that is both of them combined. And that would make sense that if Maharaga has adapted to those attacks, that would be both of his techniques leading him to surmise to try to destroy Maharaga with brute force. That would make sense for his kind of progression for what he decided. Or two, it may potentially not be effective for some reason against Maharaga, so he's not even considering using it. But that one doesn't sound as good to me. And this leads into now, though, that Maharaga had adapted to both light-based techniques and now brute force. You'd think that leaves Dabura with basically no win condition now. But because Dabura unlocked RCT this chapter, that opens up the possibility for Dabura to use reversal now. So he could use reversal on his curse technique, if it's light, maybe that is some sort of darkness or void situation. But that's what I wanted to kind of just bring up, was that now we may potentially see a reversal from Dabura's curse technique. Very rare in the series. I think in the original series, we only saw 2 instances of reversal, one being Gojo with red, and 2 being actually Kenjaku with the gravity. The gravity we saw in his battle was actually the reversal of Kaori Itadori's anti-gravity system. So those were the only 2 instances of reversal that we've seen. So it would be really, really cool to see reversal show back up, and that actually could be a way for Dabura to now win, because it'll be something that Maharaga has not been adapted to, and it is a technique that's based in positive energy rather than cursed energy, so it would be even more powerful than Dabura's light techniques, which is insane because those already have some incredible destructive capabilities. So that was what I wanted to make sure that I touched on. And then I guess I'll just talk about, kind of Yuji's role here real fast. Like I said, I don't know how much longer Modulo is going to go. If it is that shorter runtime, there is a chance that Yuji is just going to show up. He's going to show up now. He's going to make all of these people basically stop fighting, and then he's going to want Dabura and Yuka to stop their battle as well. And that might mean Yuji showing up to take out Maharaga himself take him out himself as an outsider of the ritual, thereby like annulling it. And then similar to what Sukuna did in Shibuya, and then maybe through Yuji's blood manipulation, and he may have developed and continued to hone his RCT ability. Maybe somehow that could be how Yuka in her brain tumor situation could potentially be reversed or healed through Yuji. So those are just kind of some final bonus thoughts that I forgot to throw into the breakdown. But regardless, Modulo is and has been incredible, and I'm just very grateful to be along for the ride with all of you who may be watching this. So I appreciate you all and can't wait for chapter 20. Peace.